Okay.
Good afternoon, it's Tuesday, May 28th, at approximately 4 p.m. I'd like to call the meeting of the Board of Water Commissioners to order.
And
The first order of business is to reorganize since the last of the election. I did go to town hall today, and I am a duly sworn representative.
okay, so at this time, we can take nominations to reorganize.
I nominate Richard Loring Jr. to be chair.
Okay.
Okay,
And
sure.
Chris,
I mean, did you want to be chair?
I'll continue chair if that's what you two would like.
I'm fine with that. I will second that then.
Okay, and nominations for vice chair.
I nominate Barbara Lanson as vice chair.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Mhm.
All in favor, cry.
All in favor of both positions, I guess we'll do it as a slate, so Richard, oh my gosh, Richard Warren Jr.
Who's that?
No, is it?
Yes,
Wait, it is, yeah, Richard, it's Richard, right?
it's Richard, yeah.
Why am I second guessing myself?
I don't know.
It's Richard.
We
Richard Warren
didn't
Jr.
think you ever second guessed
Oh
yourself.
my gosh, Richard W. Warren Jr. as chairman and Robert Arlenson as vice chairman.
Yeah. Business as usual.
And you wanna do a roll call vote on that or just 3-0-0?
300 should be all right.
Okay, all right. Moving on.
Okay, first order of business is to approve the minutes of the meeting for April 23rd, May 8th, and May 14th.
I move,
All three commissioners were present for all three, so we can do it as one vote rather than three votes.
I move that we approve the minutes as mentioned by Bud as published.
I'll second that.
Moved, second, and so voted to approve the minutes of those three meetings. The next order of business is an appointment with Kristen Berger to talk about the water grant study and also the Main Street Water Main Project.
Okay, so the first that I wanted to just talk about was the consumer confidence report for the water quality from last year. And you had a draft in your packet. This is also still a draft, it's just in color. So this just has it's pretty similar to last year's, has the updated water quality information. On page 2, I updated the part about the new filtration facility. So just reminding people that the Grassy Hole plant has now been online for 1 full year. And just reiterate about that project working successfully. Water quality on page 4 was updated with the recent 2023 testing data. Page 5 is a new page about water conservation. And so just encouraging customers to follow the water restriction that's in place, check for leaks, so it's kind of a nice little handy guide for how to go about checking your water meter. And Chris mentioned that in addition to the meter that's shown here, also using an older style census 2 meter. So I'll try to show both of those. Their faces are a little bit different on them, just to let
Yeah,
Oh,
people know.
that will confuse me.
Yeah, they can check it that way. And also the other big things, usually the toilet leaks. And being able to get the non-toxic dye tablets to put in the toilet tank and see if they have a leak that way, so.
Is that something we can supply people?
You do have some tablets here, right?
Yeah.
We'll just let them know if they want to come pick one up, they could.
They typically do, when we notify people of high water usage, they get that letter, they usually come in, and that's the first thing that they check, and we give them some tablets.
Okay.
They can also use like food coloring too.
I'm not looking at the PFAS stuff.
Oh, yes.
It's a little minor heading there under these regulated substances. Is that something you want to highlight a little bit more? 'Cause I imagine a lot of people are hearing that in the news and they see that as something, because, PFAS is not detected in our wells?
Yeah, for the 2023 data, it was all non-detect, so there was nothing that was required to be included, so I can make that more bold, or,
Just so that people see this, I think, 'cause I was looking for it, I couldn't find it right away to
Okay.
see if I was concerned about that,
okay,
whether it is in the, wherever you think would be best, but just at least highlight it more so that people.
Maybe bold it.
I can do a little paragraph thing, if you were looking for it in that way.
Just that, PFAS has been in the news lately, type of thing
Yeah.
there. We have been, we've been monitoring that actively, and there's none in our active wells, something like that.
Because I can shift something, I think we have this, our water system, that's on page 2, it's the
Yeah.
lower. We had that on page 1 last year, there's a little bit of space on the cover.
Yeah.
Move that, and I can put PFAS like right there to
Yeah, so I think
have
that's,
a discussion about that, so it
that'd
jumps
save
right
us a
out.
lot of.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
Okay,
Especially when your town next door in Duxbury is having major problems with PFAS.
There's none in the moment here, we are actively monitoring,
And we're not expecting it, but
and not expecting it. Notify and assure.
good stuff.
very comprehensive.
Very well done. I like the way it's put together and says a lot about what we're.
Yes, good, glad. The next thing on my list is the Main Street water main job. So for that, the contractor has gotten their bond from insurance, they're putting that in the mail to me today. So I'll get that this week and assemble the books. We're just, Chris and I talking before the meeting about doing a meeting with him, and Matt Darsh will be the inspector. Meet with them next Tuesday, I'll drop off the contract books at that meeting, and then Chris can get all the signatures. Gonna call the contractor tomorrow to talk about scheduling a pre-construction meeting with him. Try to target June 11th, which is the next Tuesday, 2 weeks from today. And I'll see if he's available to kick that off then. We should have all the signed books by that point and hopefully have the TOT permit. So their update was they moved it from a preliminary draft, I guess, some phase into they should be able to issue it phase by June 5th. So. Not that. And
You don't have any sense that there's a problem. do you?
no, it's just going through, the cons of it. I think it's getting close. I felt like that last time. I don't know why they couldn't have issued it. There's like this extra step, I feel like in there, but that's what it is. So we'll get that. The contractor wasn't able to get the maintenance bonds. They got the performance bond and the FEMA bond, which is traditionally what we have. Since it's a DOT project, you also need to have this maintenance bond, which we have in the contract. But they need to see the permit from DOT before the bonding company will give them the maintenance bond. So once we get that, they'll be able to just supplement, you can attach that to the agreement, the contract, so. But the pre-con on the 11th, tentatively, we should have that DOT permit by then, and even if not, there's other stuff that we can be talking about. Just get the ball in motion. Yeah, get it on. So the other thing I had was, last meeting, we talked about doing like a public education type summary about the project that you could put on the website. So this is like a 2-page thing, there's a map on the back. Very simple description about what the project is.
I think the map's very useful.
Okay.
For people that are struggling to figure out where it starts and where it ends, that helps.
Just to simplify, it's basically just showing the paving limits is what I had Kurt turned on, and so rather than all the details, which I think some people might struggle to look at, construction drawings, this is a nice overview about here's where the work's happening.
I don't think they need the construction drawings. I think it's too complicated. you know,
Yeah, I agree too.
the, you know,
Not everybody knows how to read those,
No.
and it's confusing.
Yeah.
In fact, there are people that don't know how to read it, that will read it wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. The only question I'm wondering if we're gonna put this on a website, is there some way that we can make the intersecting streets on the map a little bit more bold so that when someone looks at it, if they look at it, they can see it because,
Yeah,
Like a larger font or,
no, just like this, how the streets stand out a bit,
Yeah.
the streets,
Shading,
like
the
the Jones
coloring.
Road,
Yeah.
the river.
Yeah.
don't really
Something
care
like that.
about the lot lines and the rest of that, but if we
okay.
can do something on
I
the,
get it.
on the street lines, you know, and we don't really care too much about the river either, other than the fact that it's an important character.
I can turn the lot lines off, it's probably
Yeah.
confusing.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would stand out well
Yeah. No, that's helpful. I look at maps differently, so I don't even pick up on it, it just, that stuff
Yeah.
goes in the background, but it is busy and confusing with that on there, so I get it. Do we need to have any kind of other like focus of the town saying, here's where the town is and here's where the work is? Or people
then. I
generally
think
know
people know what,
Yeah.
see that.
you know,
Jones Road was pretty clear.
when they see, yeah, Main Street, Route 3, Summer Street.
you might, when I think about it, does it make sense to show, Hilltop Avenue basically to the elementary school, sort of identifying the elementary school or Cancun as a landmark?
Okay, turn on elementary.
That's not a bad idea, Cancun especially, because everybody knows what it is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Route 3 is Route 3, but that's just a wide, road you're showing there.
And if you put the landmarks of Cancun and
Yeah.
the elementary schools, you want to drop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I can do that. Okay. You think more words are needed?
no, the less words, the better, When people start reading words, they then wanna interpret what you're trying to say.
But it's also, they'll look at this and say, oh, I can read that.
Yeah.
And if they see continued on page 2,
It's going.
And I'm not sure that even,
I was trying to make it so that the map might fit here, but it was too small to really read it.
the question is whether or not funding is really necessary as part of the public outreach.
Like a space, I might be able to get, if we can make the font a little bit more readable, a little bigger, have the map stuck on here.
Yeah, and,
Right,
you-
right.
people aren't gonna worry about where the funding's coming from.
it's good to be there because it shows we did our due diligence to limit how much rate pays have to pay, but I wouldn't make a big deal.
Yeah, that'll give me a better half page to try to fit the map. So then it's one glance. Okay, good. That'll be better. Excellent. Okay, anything else about the Main Street project? Any questions? Okay. Next up, we'll go through the Water Management Grant Project, so that's the big handout. And so for this, I wanted to focus the discussion on the source capacity evaluation. We'll talk about the rate study at the next meeting. Just need to break it up. So, as you remember, the project scope included a water demand analysis portion, water conservation method review, source capacity evaluation, and storage capacity evaluation. So we'll be going over all those items today, and then the water rate study part. We'll talk about this next meeting. Just big picture with the review of the water demands, we looked at water usage from 2014 through 2023. Found that your average day demand for the annual average day demand ranged from 1.26 all the way up to 1.63 million gallons per day. The average during that time period was 1.41 million gallons per day. Notably, the annual average day demand increased by about 13% going from 2021 to 2022, which you can see on the graph that's over to the right. Customer connections have increased by between 2014 and 2023. There's been an increase in service connections of about 27%. So that's a good number of people connecting to the system over 10 years. And most of those are residential connections. The July, taking a deeper dive into looking at what was going on month by month water usage. The July average day demand is about 1.8 times the January average day demand. So that's, you know, if you consider the January average day demand is the necessary indoor water use, almost doubling that in July for dealing with outdoor water use. So it indicates that there is still a high volume of water that's going to outdoor, whatever people are doing with it outdoor.
Lawns, washing cars.
Yeah.
Slip and slides.
Yeah, right, having fun in the summer. More about the water demand analysis. We took a look at the metered water use, specifically for 2022 and 2023, in comparison to the previous years, and found that there was a significant increase in the municipal metered use. And after meeting with Chris and Stacy and going through the data over the course of a couple months, we found that there was a data discrepancy for those 2 years for the municipal metered use. So it was reported higher than it was actually should have been. One of them was from one of the bleeders, the meter had turned over, and when that happens, it puts a 90 in front of the meter read, and it just wasn't caught with whatever, you know, all the efforts going on, personnel changes. And then in 2023, there was just some other data confusion. Not exactly sure what happened there, but and all in all, it just means that that water that was believed to have been metered water was actually non-metered water, which is essentially lost water, unaccounted for water. So the graph on the right shows what your unaccounted for water was over that time period, and you have been pretty good about being able to keep it less than 10%, which is Mass DEP's goal. 2022, it went up to 19%. It was believed to have been 4% at the time, and now we know it was 19%. And I stressed that with DEP. I'll talk a little bit about that meeting separately. But like, no, they didn't know it was
Is
that
there-
high until right now.
Is there a
So
reason to not trust the 2021 data before? Do you think there's
Um,
issues with that data? Because it seemed to all of a sudden jump twice
Yeah.
as much.
and it coincides. It actually makes sense because when you go back to the page before and you look at your annual average day demand, there was this significant increase from 2021 to 2022. You know, you were tracking 1.42. The year before was a particularly dry year, so 1.49, and then all of a sudden it was 1.6, 1.63. So when I noticed that there was that increase in municipal metered use, I was like, geez, that increase is the water that we want to try to capture to get back down to like closer to 1.4.
Yeah.
And I thought maybe there was a leak in one of the buildings, the municipal buildings, and, you know, no one knew because
They don't really being needed very much.
it wasn't being billed until
Yeah.
recently, so you wouldn't pick up on it. You know, now the municipal accounts are getting billed, so stuff like that will get flagged more. But that wasn't the case. It was
Yeah.
this,
Just people using too much.
it was paper. No, it was that the bleeder meter turned over.
Oh.
So it was
that's right.
just a paper. It wasn't real. It wasn't real data.
Okay.
So we have data from the municipal buildings yet to really look at?
Yes, so
yet, or-
that's what we looked at, and Stacy pulled the real numbers for the municipal buildings.
Yeah.
And we also included the water that gets used at the treatment plants for backwashing,
Mhm.
which is those meters, that's a big meter, it doesn't go through the billing software.
Mhm.
added that together, and it was still
Yeah.
way less than what it was originally thought to be. So,
And so, but we have a plan going forward about how to check and see where some of those leaks might be happening.
yeah, so it seems like it's a system issue, and there was an operational issue that happened in 2022 that was a decrease of system pressure.
Mhm.
And then once a well pump kicked on, or multiple well pumps kicked on, repressurized the system, just a sudden change in pressure like that can
Yeah.
cause some pipes to wiggle.
Mhm.
And so there could be multiple leaks around, so.
But we can narrow it down to maybe a certain section of
Yeah,
the
so
system.
Chris
to look at
is
more closely.
already getting quotes for leak detection,
Okay.
having a separate company come in to do the leak detection to try to identify where some of these might be. I mean, they've been chasing leaks for the past couple of years,
Mhm.
really since 2022. There seems to be like a constant supply of them. They get reported because they surface.
Mhm.
But there can be leaks that are happening that in the
Don't
sand
surface.
that don't surface.
Mhm.
And that's what you want the leak detection company to try to find.
Yeah.
So that'll be a big deal. If that can be brought down, back down to below 10%, that's very helpful. The other part of the water conservation aspect is the residential per capita usage. The DEP has set a goal of 65 RGPCD, that's residential gallons per capita day. And you can see on the graph, that's the red line going across there. And generally stay pretty close to that level, that threshold. It does appear to have gone up in the past couple of years. That was also something that kind of came out through this project. The population that was being used for the ASR wasn't following quite a consistent way to calculate it. So I think now that we know, okay, this is the way it's gonna be calculated, and going forward, that'll be helpful for tracking this number and having the data be relatable year to year. So it just shows that for the past couple of years, the residential usage was around 70 instead of 65. So what that means is the more water conservation efforts are needed. So we really need people to comply with the water ban and do whatever else they can do to reduce their water use and get down to 65. 2023, if you remember, was a particularly wet summer. So I think that's why the 2023 number is down from those other summers. Any questions on those two? So
I
once
think
we,
it's gonna be difficult to get the town to recognize the fact that we need to get down to 65.
yeah,
Because people just don't understand the amount of difference, that, 5 or 6 gallons per day per household really has on the system, because they think it's only their house that that you're looking at.
yeah,
Really, it's the system that we need to sort of identify as a need to, pay particular attention to as far as the overall reduction. We need to make sure that, we as town government are leading the way. Whether or not it's, this building or any building in town, we need to make sure that we are doing what we say we should be doing.
yeah, so there really needs to be a more concerted effort to educate people about the importance of the water conservation, complying with the water ban. Because that data shows that they're just not. So, that the CCR, it's nice for people to actually look at it, they'll see that, but there'll need to be separate ways to communicate with people about water conservation, and that might include, not more than just posting on the website. Could be worth getting into the schools, educating the kids, then they go home and tell their parents.
We do have that, we do
Do
participate
you?
in that program.
Okay,
It's not us that does it, but it's
it's
the.
the water smart people.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay, and maybe connecting with them then on what else can we be doing to try to get this more visible.
I know there was a lag of that program in schools during the COVID years.
That makes
obviously.
sense, yeah.
And social media, if there's any top town thing that site that can be added some information onto about those things, I don't know.
Yeah, the Water Smart program might have some already put together social media
I'll take a look at that.
type things.
I know the town administrator goes on, the media once a week, I think. If we could get him to mention that, we are exceeding the state's requirement for per capita use of water.
Yeah.
And it could affect us in a number of ways, if people
I
would
just-
please.
I just wonder if the people who watch that are the people that we really need to reach. I don't think it
Yeah.
is. Unfortunately.
But it doesn't hurt if, you
No,
know.
it doesn't hurt. I just
information-
don't know that that's gonna draw. a
It'll
lot.
Yeah,
have
we don't have a
to be-
newspaper to
It
do
probably
that.
isn't, but
Plus the
it's the only
Kingston
way of
Facebook
doing
page,
it.
people are usually on, that's the thing, I think they're very most useful.
It's like, how many people read the, Patriot Ledger? It's the only paper that we have in town.
Yeah, right, we need to
Yeah.
figure out, and the Water Smart team might have some good insights on how to communicate with people. I mean, I'm an engineer, I'm not good at it.
Do we
but-
expect pushback from, DEP on, our per capita water use as we begin to get, plans set for a new well?
Yeah, there'll be grumbles about that, that permitting. There'd be no reason for them to say you can't have a new well because your water use is up across the system. I mean, that's separate from the amount you withdraw from all your sources, that's a separate issue. And I mean, that permitting program has said to me, they're not looking to prevent development, economic development, or whatever that is. They certainly wouldn't stand in the way of a public health issue of, we don't have enough water to meet Mass DEP's regulations on supplying the max day demand with our largest source out of supply. I mean, they wouldn't want to be the ones to stand in the way of you getting into compliance with that requirement. So I don't see that as being a problem, but they will start getting on you about that, and they certainly won't grant you an increase in your overall withdrawal permit until you have that complied with. And right now, that number is 1.47. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. You'll see what the implications are. I think if we can identify some of the leaks or that and get that number back below 10%, you'll get down pretty close to that 1.47, where you might not need a new permit right now. You will at some point, but just not right now.
I think the other thing that we need to stress is that, in the 10 years from 2014 to 2023, we've had a 27% increase in service connection. So, that alone will justify, a demand for a new well, that is separate from what the,
Per capita.
per capita
Yes,
is.
yeah.
The fact that per capita numbers is, I think is amazing. I didn't realize we had gone up, by that many new service connections.
Yeah, it's pretty significant once you really look at the numbers. So there was a lot of back and forth with the DCR, over the past couple months. They're the ones that do the water needs forecasts for the state. So Mass DEP gets involved, there's this water conservation committee that spearheads that Water Management Act program. And DCR is the one that's tasked with following the methodology that the commission established for determining water needs for a community. Once we figured out all of the past data issues, they were able to do a revised projection for that. They originally sent one in January. The numbers seemed low, the population seemed low. So we were able to work with them to demonstrate that the population growth was more than what the numbers were that they were using. So we did get an increase in the projections, in spite of having this issue with the unaccounted for water and the residential per capita. So the way they do those projections, they do two scenarios. One, that you would meet the 65-10, and then and the other one for maintaining your current, where you are currently. So, and so they use, and they look at it on a 5-year average, so they said, okay, if you stay at 70 residential gallons per capita day and around 15%, it was more the last 2 years, but they look at the average in the 5 years. So they just said, okay, if you stay at 15%, here's what your demands will be from now till 2046. And then if you need 65-10, here's what your demands will be 20 years from. What Mass DEP will do when they're issuing a new water management permit with communities that are over 65-10 is they'll give you a little grace period and say, okay, for the first 5 years, we'll go with the projections of where you currently are tracking. But then after that point, we expect you to be in compliance with 65-10. So if you look at this page right here, page 7, this shows the demand projections for those 2 scenarios. So there's this current trend where it ranges from, I put your current number in there, which 2023 it was 1.63. They're showing a reduction for 2026 to 1.56 because they're using an average of 15%. And in 2023, you were actually at 22% unaccounted for water. So there's a little bit of, discrepancy for that reason. But that they showed if you stay on that trend, you're gonna be all the way up at 1.74 in 20 years. So and there's no way that DEP would let you do that. So they're gonna want you to be over on the right column. That shows your demands decreasing up to 1.55, which is still more than what your current water management permit is. And if you can identify the leaks and reduce that number, you'll get down closer to that 1.47 range.
Yes, if you find some.
Yeah, it will, yeah, really, fingers crossed, it's necessary.
Cause if not, we gotta start leaning on ratepayers, it's gonna be an issue.
Yeah, very, yeah, but you they definitely need to show that you're doing everything you can.
Yep.
Yep.
So then this next 2 pages have a lot of words, I'm sorry about that, I won't read them all to you. But basically, so we reviewed the water conservation methods that you already do, and I really wanted to include these in the discussion, just so to recognize all the efforts that are taken by the water department to do water conservation. So each year you do complete those ASRs that the state requires, and that in of itself is supposed to provide an informal water audit process of tracking data, and there are things that we can do to improve and make it more consistent year to year with how data gets collected and how you go about tracking and reporting that, and I can work with Chris and Stacy or figuring out how to do that best to track that paperwork over the course of this year for next year's report. You do meter all of your sources, and each year those sources get calibrated, the meters get calibrated. You guys have 100% of your customers metered. The customer meters is sealed against tampering, and you have the ability to do a fine for tampering. You do budget for meter calibration and meter replacement in your annual budget. Customer meters are read quarterly through a radio read system, and then that usage is compared with the prior use to identify customers with high use. As Stacy mentioned, when that happens, they'll reach out to customers, contact them directly to say, hey, your water usage is up, want to let you know you might have a leak. You guys are operated as an enterprise fund with full cost pricing, so that's something that's considered a water conservation method because it encourages customers to recognize the value of water. You have an increasing 8-lot tier structure that's encourage conservation, because as you use more water, you pay more for that that gallon, it costs more, the more we water. You guys don't allow in-ground irrigation systems, and you do participate in the Water Smart program, we talked about that. And each summer implement uneven water restrictions. With the being over 65 residential gallons per day, more stringent restrictions are required for the water management act permit that you have, that we'll talk about in a little bit. And you guys do have some of your own leak detection equipment that the water operators can use to help isolate leaks, but it's, not quite the same as having a company out there dedicated to just doing that. So the other conservation methods that were identified for you to consider are to complete a formal water audit that would provide a little bit more of an in-depth review of water use and reporting practices. Mass DEP, when I met with DCR and DEP on a Zoom meeting about the water usage, and mentions that each year they do a water audit grant. That's something that DEP hires a consultant, and then you apply for the grant to have their consultant come and do a water audit. And they are, I'm not sure how much they're really useful. I don't think they physically come out here to look at any facilities. They look more at the paperwork side of things, but it's certainly, if the, it's a grant, and if it's 100% grant, they're gonna pay for it or charge just to participate in it, to show them that you're doing everything you can to help figure out this issue. So when that gets released, that application comes out, I'll let you know about it. Separate from that, related to water audit stuff, I would like to take a close look at your large water use customers. A lot of systems have found value in identifying those large water use customers and specifically approaching them about how they can reduce their usage, and that's the most bang for your buck. The other thing that is useful is if you have customers that have large meters, to make sure that their water use hasn't decreased to a point where they no longer need a large meter like that. With large water meters, if you have a low water use, it's not enough to turn the meter, and they might not be getting billed appropriately, for example, or that water use isn't getting reported.
And these usually residential ones, or are these more?
The large meters are usually more of a commercial thing. I don't think you have too many that are that big.
We have Town and Country, Conifer Green, the mall, they have big meters.
Yeah.
So.
And I don't expect them to call us and say, hey, we didn't, this bill
No.
doesn't reflect
That's
how much
why
water
you need to
we
take a
use.
look, take a closer look at it.
Yeah.
And then, but the large water use customers, those could be some residential people that you're like, they want that lush property, and they might still be able to have it, just not over water. I mean, there's gotta be a happy medium, you don't need water every day.
Well, and I don't know, because if it's commercial, it's one thing, if it's residential customers, the whole idea of that watered lawn type of thing. How do you restrict that without maybe raising rates to an uncomfortable level for those larger users? I think part of the education that goes into that, what can you do for more friendly landscaping options?
Yeah.
But
So that's that public education part, and that's what we'd have to take a deeper look at, what's gonna appeal to people, how to do that. So it's not unique to you guys, there's been other people that have gone through this, so it'd be worth reaching out to them to ask, hey, what did you guys do? How did you talk to them, and what kind of information did you give them to get them to come after the ones? There are more stringent restrictions on non-essential water use, so kind of alluded to the Water Management Act permit that you have. That says when you're over 65 the year before, you're supposed to do 1 day a week watering instead of, like right now, the permit allows you to do 7 days a week within the hours of 5 p.m. to 9 a.m. So you do it one step more and say even odd watering, which is more restrictive. But when you're over 65 per person, it's supposed to just be, I think, 1 or 2 days a week, which the even odd doesn't meet. So that's something to take a closer look at. DEP does have these, a template with an actual water use restriction bylaw. So right now, the board has the ability to implement the outdoor water use restrictions based on your rules and regs, and in one of the town bylaws, it speaks to, if there's a water emergency, you have the ability to put that in place. It might be worth thinking about doing a specific water use restriction bylaw. A lot of other water suppliers have that, so it's a formal process, it has to go through a town meeting vote. But that would in of itself get people to find out about it, why are you doing this, why do you need this, and that might be another way to educate people to go through that process. But that's certainly not something that happens quickly, because you have to, it's a bylaw.
And the alternative would be, again, trying to do economic rate changes to limit that higher usage there.
Yeah.
So it'd be like a, either bylaws or maybe both.
The spike in the second, third.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and which we'll look at the next meeting when I show you the water model, and we can look at how that changes, how much people get billed, how many people fall within the first tier, second tier. So you'll know how many customers are being impacted by this, and we don't want to impact customers that they need that water, we want to still be able to.
I mean, even the odd even, we could further restrict that and from, odd even to do it 2 days a week.
Yeah, we used to do.
We
It was
used to do,
even houses on Tuesdays and Saturdays,
Right.
odds on Thursdays and Sundays.
right, we may in fact, go to that type of restriction without going through a town bylaw. Which will,
Yeah.
A zoning bylaw becomes very problematic,
Would surprise me if the change was responsible for the additional water use. Because it used to be twice a week.
Yep.
And now it's
Even on,
even
even
though,
not every other
Yeah.
day.
yeah,
So that's almost twice as much water use.
Yeah.
Or twice as many opportunities to use outside water.
yeah.
That probably is what's reflecting in these numbers.
some of what you're reflecting, so we may want to take a look at that, see what we did, prior to when we were
This-
using 2 days a week
Is this
versus.
something we should be considering for this summer, right away, to start back adding on this?
I think so, yeah.
I think, we'll ask
Yeah, that would,
Kristen to come back in 2 weeks with what her recommendation is. If she can look at the numbers that, show up in this and whether or not,
yeah,
there's
I don't think
anything.
I'd be able to tell you how much you'd save by doing
Yeah.
that, because it's hard to say with the summer to summer, with the
Yeah.
different rain and
Yeah.
Yeah.
what's from the water conservation.
But you can generalize and give us some direction we need to go. And by the way, I think this would be very helpful to deal with DEP.
Yeah.
If we step up now, not wait until they put their thumb on us.
Yeah.
What if I looked back in the restrictions to see when it changed?
That might help,
Would that
yeah,
track it?
correlate,
Yeah.
yep,
Yeah, you already got the water use here,
Yeah.
so you could track the water use.
yeah.
And you don't need to water more than 2 days a week, almost no matter how
Yeah.
long they can see.
Okay. Yeah, and the other thing was the system-wide leak detection, so Chris is already working on getting some quotes to do that. And with your water management act permit, that's something that DEP will be looking for you to do now that you're above 10%. When I met with them last week, the person said, well, that's something they should have already done last year, and I'm like, well, wait a second, everybody, and DEP approved 4% on account of water, it's only now that we're finding out that that was actually 90%, so.
Yeah.
It's like, no, everyone thought it was 4%, and there was no need to do it, now there is, so we're jumping on it as fast as you can. So going into the water supply capacity evaluation, we talked a little bit already about the Mass DEP requirement that you be able to supply your maximum day with your largest source offline. Or you, that would be your Charcoal Pond well, that's your largest source. So if you didn't have that, you still have to meet the max day. And your most recent 5 years resulted in a max day of 2.88. Based on the DCR water needs forecast, your projected max day could range anywhere from 3 to 3.4 million gallons per day. Your available supply with your largest source offline at pumping the other wells 24 hours is 2.616. So that's clearly less than 2.88 and the future of 3 to 3.4. So your current deficit is around 200 gallons per minute for the whole day, and then future deficit could be about 550 gallons per minute. So that's just something to keep in mind for, we need a new source, whatever form that comes in, that's the kind of water that we're looking to get. So the source capacity identified that you need to construct a new well or find a new source of water. Could be interconnection, something like that. I don't wanna say it's only a new well, but
It's a new
I'll
well.
talk, we made some
It's a new
calls
well.
and yeah,
Yeah.
it's certainly, the best way for you to control it. I think you moved to the interconnection if you had no property. We have no place else to build a well, but you do, so. Yeah. This next sheet is just showing what we just talked about in graph form. It kind of helps to see that. The green line is the available supply with the largest source offline, and clearly your water demands have increased above that green line in the past and will continue to, even with water conservation. Will continue to. The other part about your supply is your Water Management Act permit. The combined withdrawal authorized withdrawal is 1.47. Your average withdrawal from the past 10 years was 1.41. And that limit, as you can see on this other graph, this is the solid red line. And you were doing good staying under the solid red line until 2022 and 2023. And this is where, if you're able to find and repair those leaks,
You should be able to get
you
back
might be able
down.
to get down below that line.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's definitely worth that effort. DEP is not looking for you to file a application for a new water management act permit right now. Because they're looking at that unaccounted for water and per capita water and saying, no, we're not gonna authorize you to withdraw more. We want you to fix that first.
Yeah.
And then we'll talk.
It's kind of like when someone has a leak and they want, dated bill.
Yeah.
You do it, unless
Yeah.
you show proof that it's
Right.
addressed.
And when you do, you might find out, oh, we don't need to ask for more water after all. We fixed it and we're okay.
Find some big leaks, Chris.
Yeah.
We're looking, we're gonna look.
So this first page, other thing about your, on this, sorry, in this graph on page 13. This shows your registered wells are in this dark blue. And your registration limit is this dashed red line. So those are your older wells, registered wells. Your water management act permit includes both registered sources and permitted sources. We're supposed to be keeping that dark blue line below the dashed red line. There were some issues during 2022 and 2023 that prohibited that. The 186 well is a permanent well. Charcoal Pond well is the permanent well. 186 well was offline during the construction of the treatment plant in 2022. 2023, you guys had the tank, the Elm Street tank offline, and really weren't able to use Charcoal Pond well at all because of that. And also 186 was still offline because it hadn't been cleaned yet, the pump had to be done. So you were forced to rely on the registered well. It just was bad luck that those things happened and kind of prohibited you from using both permanent wells. So that, considering an anomaly, but just keep that in mind, so while you're managing water, the focus with doing the flow control valve at the booster station was to be able to rely on Trapped Pond well, send water into the low zone to kind of minimize use of the registry wells, so I think you better look at that, and, you know, I think that's something, and I have that explained in the report for, as people forget, and, you know, DEP comes back and says, wait a second, why, blah, 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 blah,
Yeah,
blah.
yeah.
There's reasons for that. This next graph is just showing the future water demands that we talked about. Kind of also still being above the line, but it gives you a feel too for the black here is based on your current trends. The blue is based on 6510, so you can see what the range, the difference is there. And if you're able to get down to the blue, you stay under that red line almost through 2041. And before you
Yeah.
would need a new permit.
So Frank,
Yeah, it's worth, definitely worth doing. So more about the potential additional water source. We've, you know, talked at previous meetings about the extensive groundwater exploration that you've done throughout town over the years since the 70s. And based on all of that work, the best site for a new well is southwest of Trapped Pond. That's the property that you're trying to purchase. And that certainly seems like the most valuable site for a well with a yield similar to the existing Trapped Pond well, which has a yield of 1,000 gallons per minute. So even if this well, which would still be a good well, was rated for 700 gallons per minute, it's still more than what we're thinking you'd need with that range of 200 to 550 gallons per minute. So that's great. I called the neighboring water systems that touch your water system to talk to them about their water situations. And Duxbury confirmed that they could only supply a small area of Kingston for a short-term water emergency up to a week during the summer and not during 4th of July week. So it would be like, oh, you have a main break and for some reason you have to isolate a section of town from the rest of the system. And you're pretty well looped, so there's pretty limited spots where that would happen, where you wouldn't be able to backfeed from yourself. But that's basically what they can do for you.
which isn't a whole lot, which I wouldn't
No.
expect. We're not
No.
planning on supplying water for them either. so.
No. I'll skip to talk about Pembroke. They also do not have additional supply. Since they are in a similar situation, they do not meet their max day demand with the largest source offline. They are in the process of installing a new well. They estimate that to happen next fall. But they also have to do a water treatment facility, and they think that's like 3 years out, so. They could help with an emergency short-term thing, but not anything more than that. Plymouth, on the other hand, they have 2 pressure zones that are close to your system. There's a town center pressure zone. That connection is down on Route 3A. That zone works at about 187 feet. It's where your low zone is. Your low zone can't go over flows are 189 feet, so you would end up having to operate down on your grade line without booster pumping. They thought they might be able to supply an unknown quantity of water for an unknown duration, but they, you know, in terms of an interconnection, like a permanent metered interconnection, they thought it might be possible. But they would need a hydraulic analysis done by their engineer, and then clearly it would need to be a municipal, intermunicipal agreement. So you would have to, their town selectmen would have to vote on it, you know, in their town.
Right now, some catastrophe in any one town, there's no real game plans in effect to help
Oh,
towns out. It's gonna be like
that would be like a
Piecemeal sort of
mutual,
thing.
more of a mutual aid thing. That's
the
different
state doesn't
than,
require any sort of redundancy with neighboring towns to help out other towns if they have
they don't
a crisis.
require it. It's that there is usually like a, just an informal
'Cause you hear like-
Sometimes there's more formal agreement of
Mhm.
cooperative helping in an emergency, like, and there'll be an actual written agreement between towns to do that.
Cause we hear like boil orders sometimes for other communities, cause that's, they're not gonna get anything from anyone else, they're just basically trying to solve the problem in-house.
Yeah, if someone has a boil water, nobody else is gonna wanna connect to them.
Can't even
Anyway,
help them out, cause it's gonna
You-
be.
risk
big.
getting.
you-
Yeah, cross connect,
just don't
Makes
wanna do
sense.
So you
that.
got a cross
Right.
connection.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, so it's, you basically
You're
are.
on your own.
So even a lot of these things here, a catastrophe that where we need, some needs basically prevent us from even accessing these sort of.
Well, yeah, except for like for Plymouth, they thought it might be possible for them to give you supplemental water on a
Yeah.
more long-term basis,
Yeah.
as you needed it in the summertime. But that's a process that would take years to work through, because you have to, there's politics involved with that.
Yeah.
So
And we'd have to
now,
be willing to give them when they need it as well.
yeah,
It's just like, that's just gonna give us.
no, they're gonna want something, so, and
Yeah.
then, you know, obviously,
Yeah.
you'd be paying for everything, for analysis, for the
Yeah.
metered interconnection, for the water. But there's the other part of it, that you don't know about the town politics going on behind the scenes, of what is their master plan for development in Plymouth, and they've been doing a lot of growth. So, you know, I would think they would be, you know, the water departments might be like, oh yeah, we have extra water we can give to you. But the other departments in town are gonna say, well, wait a second. You know, we're gonna need that water, because we wanna keep growing and building, and, you know, that's a tough one to say, so it's possible though, but it's
not a solution.
not,
And the other thing is, you gotta look at what they're doing as far as treatment of their water and
Yeah.
how that is compatible to what
Yeah.
we're doing, so.
yeah, the blending of the
The
water is
blending of the
huge
water
issue. There's a
become-
lot of,
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot of issues
Yeah.
that
Let's hope we
appear
don't
to
have
be
these-
easy.
That's why it's only an emergency.
Yes.
yeah, well, and
Yeah.
that's why
Yeah.
it's where you have identified a potential source for a new
Yeah.
well, that's still preferable than trying to do an interconnection. I've worked with other systems that the interconnection is their last resort, because they're not in as good a situation in the state, you know, might maybe out in central Mass where you run into a lot more bedrock. And there aren't as many good sites for wells. So in those situations, they're like, well, we have no water, we're running out of water, we have no water. All right, interconnection, great. Someone's gonna give us some water. But you aren't quite into that corner yet, so. Good to keep in the back of your minds.
And I don't think any of the towns around us particularly interested in connecting water. It's a potential short-term solution to a catastrophe.
Yes,
Yeah,
and I think they'd be willing to help with that, more of a mutual aid type effort at that point, sharing of, just similar to sharing of equipment. And catastrophe, like even a natural disaster type, bad storm. So, yeah, the water supply capacity recommendation is to continue to pursue the new well. And you're in the process of purchasing that land. I did want to bring up that the land purchase will require some approval by DEP in some format. So they, especially once you're going into that new source approval process. Think the best approach right now
I
is
actually
to.
put that in their packet.
Did you? Yeah, this is the instructions for that process, but it's extremely confusing. Because these instructions will cover purchase and sale of property. And it's purchase of property for new sources, other conservation restrictions. So it's very confusing, a lot of it doesn't apply, it's hard to tell, well, what will we need to give DEP for information? I certainly wouldn't let it hold up the purchase of the land. This is something that you would have to go through even if you wanted to if you said, okay, the town already owns this land, and now we wanna use it for a well. They wouldn't be like, oh, no, you can't do that, you know, you just have to go through, it's just it puts a conservation restriction on the property to make it protected for the well. So I think the best option is to contact the Southeast region and say, how would you like us to proceed? Do you want us to wait until we start the new source approval process, or should we do something with this now?
my recommendation is we continue to pursue purchasing the land, and once we have it in the town's name, then we move on to this, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's not complicate, the purchase of the property from Kelleher,
Yeah.
That's in process, that's all been signed, we're now doing, the necessary research so that we can complete that purchase.
Right.
Make sure that we get that done.
I think that's prudent, and then you can put a conservation restriction on the property once you have it. You're not looking to build the well tomorrow, there's still some, all these next steps to go through, we have, they'll, hydrogeologists, since it's been since 2018, since that, the 4-inch test wells that are out there were installed, it's prudent just to
We
pump
don't-
those again. Certainly in 2018, we didn't know anything about PFAS, and that one would not have been sampled for, I don't think.
There's nothing around there that I would suspect. and it's
It
pretty
should be
much-
similar to the other wells,
Yeah.
protected and everything, but,
It's right.
I'd be shocked if the water quality is different at Chocolate Pond.
yeah, would agree. If we certainly found iron and manganese, no
Yeah.
surprise. But that would be worth doing. Still trying to figure out between now and the next meeting, try to get some better idea on the schedule of these steps. Sometimes, once you go through that 4-inch test well, you'll do a larger diameter test well before jumping to the permanent well. I just need to better understand the hydrogeologist's comfort level with that. If we need to go to now an 8-inch diameter test well, pump that to be able to determine whatever calculations need to be determined. Or if we can just say, we'll skip that and initiate the new source approval process. So for the next meeting, especially where it ties into the rates and when are we gonna end up having to pay back the loan for the construction of the well and pump station? That ties into that whole rate analysis, is that 4 years, 5 years, 6 years down the road? Makes a big difference for that. Okay. Any questions about the supply capacity analysis? Okay. Yeah, almost there. Water storage. And this we also touched on in previous meetings, so we'll be able to move through this pretty quickly. Looking at your current storage. Between the two zones, sharing storage, there's enough storage to cover your current needs. The concern is as the high zone grows, you already expand the high zone down Marion Drive. That only has one storage tank, so you have no storage redundancy in the high zone. That was a huge problem with taking the Elm Street tank offline to paint it. Caused all sorts of issues where you couldn't run the traffic on well and all that, so. As that high zone continues to grow, there's even more reason to have another tank in the high zone. That'll also give you some additional storage to meet some demands, provide for additional fire flow over at that end of the high zone. Right now, the Elm Street tank and the traffic pond well are pretty close to each other, so it'd be good to get something over on the other side of the high zone. So we looked at these 4 sites that we talked about previously. The end of pond tank property, and this one, you have 2 utility easements. Town already owns the land. There is space on the site for a 200 by 200 feet construction zone. Looking at the topography in that area, it seems like you'd be able to grade out to get to elevation 170 feet. The high zone has an overflow level of 281 feet. So you'd end up looking at a short elevated tank of about 111 feet. The reason why I say an elevated tank, and it would be a fairly smallish one with a 500,000 gallon, which would be a good amount to supply residential fire flows in the area. Can certainly get you the 2,000 gallon permitted range, which is more than what you need for a residential fire. And not have too much water. You don't want to oversize the storage tank and have a water quality problem because you have too much water sitting in the system. So, that 500,000 gallon size spheroid, which would be kind of rounded like a golf ball on a tee style tank. In the past, with a tank that's 111 feet, the tendency would be to do a tall standpipe, just like Elm Street tank. With the cost of steel, it makes doing a spheroid style more attractive. We discovered that recently on another project. So that's something that could be reevaluated when you get to that point of designing a tank. So right now, it's based on, the cost analysis is based on that spheroid style tank. Certainly be close to the homes, so that's kind of a negative with this
Yeah,
property.
no, I'd be very concerned about
Yeah.
Yeah.
the construction and then
Very big,
the wall, the storage tank being there.
very disruptive to the neighbors.
Yeah.
But it would look like a golf ball.
It would be-
Yeah,
Yeah.
this could be public art,
You can repaint that, you can paint it, whatever you want.
okay,
Leave a
yeah,
little tree
Indian
buffer.
Water States will give us money to,
next,
No.
You know, I did use the hydraulic model for it, and comparison to the current situation and having the new tank, you would gain about 20 pounds. If you had a fire over at Gallon Road, that area, so that's the opposite side of the system from the Elm Street tank. So you're able to have more higher pressures. Yeah, this is the downfalls, that's it. So site 2 is the Country Club Way property. It's the same property where the wastewater plant leaching fields are planned on being constructed.
let me ask you a question,
Yeah.
is there any sanitary problems with having them that close together?
No, not sanitary problems, because
Because
you have,
piping,
from the piping perspective, you have separation from that.
because that seems to be the only real problem with this site.
Yeah, I think you would, you know, certainly the geotech would have to get involved in determining, does it require a deeper foundation? Do we need to have micro piles because of the extra water in the area? But that's just a small detail. Maybe that's something that's, you can get past that. It's really not as bad as it sounds.
Just seemed up the 4 sites, when I was looking through it, this seems like the most.
It does rate the
it
highest.
actually improves the, the area.
Yeah, you,
It's also great, that it creates a lot of redundancy throughout Kingston State, so if that system is, it's only 2 in, ins and outs, everything's in high pine, pine cone, you get the high zone.
Yep.
State,
So
so
it's still gonna be an
if I have
elevated
this
tank
tank over there,
that you're visible seeing as you go in this area.
yeah, you get a little more buffer from people, more opportunity to leave some trees. Probably the only negative is that currently is some sort of mapped priority habitat. But they're getting permits to construct the leaching pits, so. Or leaching fields, I should say, so whatever it is,
And
it
the
could
tank
be.
is pretty passive.
It could be a turtle that you just need to look for while you're in construction, and it's not that bad, it's a priority habitat, it's not like. Can't possibly touch it kind of thing. Yes, that one only requires a short distance too to connect to the distribution system. And found that with the model, you were able to gain about 30 pounds with having that potential fire at Gallon Road compared to the other site, because you get in the water there and quicker, that end of the system. The next one I looked at for town-owned property was the 186 tank site, which would put the tank right in the zone 1, which is a negative, but it's not prohibited, you're allowed to use the zone 1 property for water department purposes, but clearly it's not ideal. Similar construction to the other sites in terms of the ground elevation, but you do end up with quite a bit of water main, over 4,000 feet.
Yeah, that's a lot, that's a lot.
I think that's a lot like the next one.
Lot of extra costs, a lot of extra costs.
Notice where
Yeah.
I told you I thought the priority would be.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so the Monticello property, town-owned
Let's just
property.
skip it.
Brought it up now.
Let's just skip it, because this is.
It's,
Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
no, it goes through the woods, through protected area. I'm like, I don't even know the water main route.
I brought it up, and I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
No,
Which we're
it shouldn't be
considering.
brought up. I think it's important when we bring it up because
Yeah.
it's a potential.
Because somebody will
When you-
ask.
when you look
Somebody
at it,
will say, how come you don't put it on the high?
Yeah.
Right,
Absolutely, you wanna say, no, we looked at it all, and it might be something that happens in another 50 years.
And all you're gonna say is, we looked at it.
Right,
And if site two doesn't work out, because that
Yeah.
looks like to be the
Yeah.
no-brainer, then we have to look at those other areas, but
Mhm.
yeah,
right,
yeah,
yeah.
that's good.
Yeah, and related to that, I just wanted to include this slide on page 28, I thought this was useful information. It shows the elevations of the system that are too high to serve, which is the yellow, that's basically the Monksville area. So right now, if like extending the water main over to Monksville, you wouldn't be able to connect those customers that are over there, because they wouldn't have any pressure.
That is about the biggest nightmare place to put a tank, because could you imagine with all that construction and then saying to people, sorry, you can't hook up?
Yeah, it would have to be a separate pressure zone, so you'd have a booster pump and the tank.
They're not.
Well, eliminate site 4 completely, because
So,
you'll have a whole new
Yeah.
water commission if you do site 4.
so that was just,
don't eliminate it, leave it because it's important.
Oh, yeah,
yeah,
look
part of the
at it.
project, yes.
Yeah.
Eliminate it as a consideration.
Yeah.
That's
Whatever
correct.
to say.
We're
Yeah.
getting there with, I have some advantages to this, we kind of talked about them already with each site, I just wanted it to be, it's documented in the report, this is why this site's good, this site's not as good.
It's site 4, the disadvantages are larger than the advantages.
Yes, that's right, there are. And so for each site, I included this really rough cost comparison, relative kind of cost comparison, it's early days for this kind of cost, but just to be able to get a feel for what, I mean, that has to play into it, well, we talked about some of the things about proximity to neighbors and hydraulics, but cost does matter, so. Looking at the different options, clearly tank site 2 is the most cost effective for the,
And less disruptive to
Yeah.
neighbors. Well, thank you for doing this work, because that'll make our decision when we pick tank site 2. Will make us confident that we picked the right.
absolutely, and if it wasn't just about cost, I have this table here that I put together about. I'm an engineer, so I like to think about things in numbers,
Yeah, these two
And-
sections
Yeah.
one's worse than 4 is.
put numbers on things, so this is a decision matrix, and each of these factors has a weighted importance. And then they get rated from 1 to 4, with 1 being less advantageous and 4 being highly advantageous. So the higher the number, the better. And we looked at effects on system hydraulics, additional flow available, property owned by the town, that's kind of, they're all owned by the town. But property restrictions are things like conservation restrictions, the priority habitat issue, it creates extra permitting stuff. If the site's in the zone 1, clearly site 3 was in the zone 1, so you have to recognize that. Community opinion has more to do with, having a tank right at site
Yeah.
1, right on top of houses. And then these things about ease of construction, clearly, there's a difference in the easiness of the water main for tank 2 compared to tank 4, site 4. So with all of that, site 2 is still the most preferable advantageous
I
site.
appreciate the effort that you put into this, because this is very comprehensive. And it's gonna make our decision easy, quite frankly, and easy to defend.
Yes, yeah, that's, the goal.
Because
You're most welcome.
like it or not, our positions are political, and that's where the phone calls are gonna go through them to us on why we picked the site and not another site.
Yes.
Having this backup information is very valuable, so thank you.
Good, you're welcome. Yeah, so the conclusions on the water storage analysis are you need a new tank, talked about, and, the cost estimate, is about $4 million for that. which will be used for the next meeting, similar to kind of the new well. If you got a loan for a new tank, how does that impact the rates, and, you know, when you kick that in? So the next steps, for the next meeting are to talk about what's the implementation schedule for the new well, that's on me to come up with. And we'll go over the rate study findings. I'll be getting a draft report to Chris and Stacy to review, and you, if you want to read the report. And then the goal will be to get that draft report to DEP, because this is a DEP funded project. By the,
But
I was just gonna say by around the third week in June.
optimally, when would we be constructing the storage tank? If everything went according to the best case scenario for us.
Oh, like how quick could you get a new tank?
No, so.
When do you need it?
When would it be?
I
In
would,
conjunction with a new well.
that's something that you need now, really, because you only have the Elm Street tank. And having it off for painting just demonstrated how difficult it is to operate. What if something happens to the tank that you have to have it offline? It's
Because
just,
what I'm thinking about is, we gotta get money for a new well, we have to get money for a new tank. The well certainly precedes the tank, I would
Yeah.
think, on priority. And as we construct the well, moving down the road, we're gonna be retiring some debt too. And
yes,
that's kind of what I was looking at,
Yeah.
or maybe
That's
you could,
timeline.
maybe you could find out what major financial savings we'll be making at some point once we retire debt, and I think we
I
retire.
have those numbers.
Oh, wonderful.
I got those numbers as part of the rate study
Oh,
for
great.
the debt
Good.
schedule
Yeah.
and when those debts retire. So, yeah, we'll be talking about that
Good.
in 2 weeks of the next.
Because
meeting.
having gone before the finance committee when they didn't think we needed something because it would put us over a borrowing limit,
Yeah,
I wanna make sure that we're in safe territory there.
yeah, I think Trackle Pond is 2035, something like that. That sounds about right, because that went on in 2014, so that was a 20-year loan. So I think that's what that information from Carol said was 2035. I'll double check. Well, we'll be talking about it. I already started pulling together the presentation on it. But yeah, that's important to,
Cause I know what the
Yeah.
questions are gonna be, and by the way, that's the whole purpose for having
Yeah.
these capital plans and stuff like that, is so that you can look forward to where you're gonna be. We had the treatment plant was an emergency, which threw a monkey wrench
Yes.
into everything in terms of borrowing. And the second one was an emergency, which threw a monkey wrench into it, and as that stuff, hopefully flattens out over time, we'll be able to do the well and the storage tank.
The important part is make sure we get the money allocated for the well.
Yep.
And, you know,
One step at a
get that
time.
one done.
One step
and
at a
then-
time.
Yeah,
yeah,
I don't wanna go to the finance committee and ask for
Both.
both at the same time.
Can I just go back to the consumer confidence report? I was looking at the dates. This has to be mailed, I have to send it out to a third party to mail and do all that stuff to get it out and delivered, because it has to be delivered by residents by July 1st.
yes.
And we don't meet again until June 14th.
I think the only thing that we
No,
would,
sorry, June 11th.
You're putting a second meter here,
Yeah, adding about PFAS.
yeah, and I think we can, I don't know that we need to make a vote on that, because I think we can trust that the relatively minor changes we're asking for will get done, so we could vote for to do this tonight.
Yeah, just because it's more
Subject-
editorial
Sub-
changes.
Subject to some minor changes.
Yeah,
I move that we approve the water quality report, subject to some minor changes.
Second,
move second so voted to approve the water quality report.
thank you.
Good guess, Stacy. Cause I know I get a call about an emergency meeting at midnight some night. Okay,
Okay,
I think that's finally it for me. Thank you for
good job.
sitting through
thank
that.
you, Kristen. Chris,
Okay, well, the crew's been doing great mitigating, the continual leaks that keep popping up in the system, you know, so. Kind of fix one, get one, and they're prioritizing those based on severity and public safety, so they've been doing a great job. They're almost doing 2 or 3 leaks a week, so they're staying busy between that and other maintenance and meter reads and turn-ons and stuff, so they're doing well. They did a great job getting the meters read. Stacy and Laurie did a great job in the office getting the bills. And then sent over to the collector's office for processing. Shut-off program, again, Stacy and Laurie doing a fantastic job with the collection rate on that, up to 86% collection rate.
It's very good.
We do have one extremely large delinquent balance that we've been working with that property owner to get that paid. And then we're
The
doing,
other option is to turn it off and we'll get paid quicker.
yes, no, we're giving them a timeline to adhere to.
Is there a new name for it? 'Cause I thought it was called a different name.
It was the Alexa and it got sold.
Oh, okay. So, what's the new name?
So we're working on that. As Chris did mention, I have been in contact with a couple different leak detection companies, working on getting quotes from people that I've spoken to in the industry that have given me other people to seek out and talk to, so that they become recommended. Got one quote back, waiting for 2 others to come back to see what we're doing with that.
Is this like something they'll do as a standalone job, or is it a constant monitoring they do?
It'll be a timeline they'll establish, and at first I was planning to do just like half the town, that the kind of the hot spots where we're having a lot of issues. But in talking to Kristen, it might be better off to do the whole town in one shot, so
Yeah, but it's a one-shot thing, and then they go
Yeah.
away, and then you call them back, because
Okay.
correct,
since I've been on the board, we've done that 3 or 4 times.
Okay.
yeah, we'll contract with them and they'll
Yeah.
come in and they'll do their work and give us a report.
And each time we did it, we found some significant leaks that
Yeah.
were helpful, so.
So it's like a month, like over a month or two? that
Yeah.
you'll be here for?
Yeah.
Yeah, a couple months.
Quick.
Is it possible, let's say they started tomorrow and found something Thursday, would you be able to start on a Friday? I guess is my point, or do you need to wait for the entire thing to be done to get the report and analyze the entire
No,
report?
as soon as they identify,
Okay,
we're gonna jump right
that's
on.
kinda what I was
I'm
hoping
not
for.
waiting for them to say, you
That's what I was hoping for.
get 10 leaks and, this one's leaking.
Yeah, they call them right away.
They got a machine to go, boom, yeah, okay, there's a big one here,
Yeah.
let's jump on that right away.
But the issues are, where do we have the money that's, necessary to fund the leak detection? Chris is,
We have a couple special articles for water maintenance of mains that was still remaining balances, so Chris and I have reviewed that.
okay, very
I
good.
think we can, pull some of the funds together to be able to cover that expense. I have been in touch with roofing contractors to get the roof repaired here each time it rains. It's a reminder that, gotta get that done.
Gotta get done.
There's some irony there. Okay.
So I had gotten a couple quotes before. One guy, they withdrew, they don't wanna do the project. Another guy, his quote wasn't as, once you get another company comes out and looks at it, they kind of identify some other things and recommendations, the way to fix it correctly, to not piecemeal it and then be chasing your tail down the road, so. The first one that I got was a kind of a patch job here and there, and I don't think that's the correct way to go. I've got 2 other quotes from contractors that were pretty much on the same page as far as intensity and scope of work that I think should really be looked into, so. And nobody else is calling me back, so.
We got that in the budget, right?
Yes, yep.
Yeah, I thought I remembered that.
Hopefully next meeting I'll have a proposal, a couple
Excellent.
proposals for you guys to review to hopefully
Excellent.
take action on it and go that route.
Good time to get it done.
And then the last thing that I have is the recent lightning storm. We suffered another lightning strike. There was some damage at the Smith's Lane tank. It was the fire department had actually witnessed the strike into the tank, and they caused a power outage and significant
Still on.
problems in that area up there, but it only damaged the radio transmitter up there for all the skater equipment on that side of town. I was able to get in touch with our skater repair company and got it repaired the next day. So,
Could have been a lot worse.
yeah, so,
And you can't really put lightning rods on a metal tank, I assume, right?
well, it's all grounded and everything, it's just, the radio electronic equipment is a little more sensitive. Even with the surge protector in there that protects it, you know.
If it's a direct hit.
It was a direct hit, it faulted out everything.
I had one at a tree in my yard, so I know
But
that's.
this was a direct hit on the tank itself.
Yeah, the fire department saw it, you know, all the radios went down, but it fixed, I was able to change things around and the other stuff that would maintain the flow, so. But other than that, it's full into the warm weather.
I see the note that unfinished business, the Kelleher anticipated closing is June 30th.
Yes, yeah, we're working with town council for that, they're doing the title search and the like for that, so that should, those reports should be back and final paperwork drawn up to.
No more surprises on the tax bill and things like that, it's all
No.
expected.
No, everything, we've done our due diligence and homework and,
What was the tax bill?
It was minimal.
yeah, in the grand scheme of things, the leftover funds we have allocated will should cover all the filings, recordings,
Beautiful.
taxes and everything else.
Beautiful, that's what we're hoping for.
And maybe have a couple dollars left over, so.
On the MBTA zoning task force update, met with Val, they will be doing a joint meeting with the selectmen on the 11th, I think it is.
June 11th?
June 11th, to talk about that, and to present, to selectmen a recommendation. It now looks like they will be looking for a special town meeting. Originally, they thought it was gonna be in late October, it now appears to be in November, which hopefully will give us enough time to, one, ensure that we own the Kelleher property, and then come up with a realistic estimate for design, development, and construction of the well.
And get it passed.
And hopefully we can get that passed at the fall town meeting, so that we can continue to
Yeah,
move forward.
I think that's kind of critical, because that's a 6-month difference.
But, and that didn't seem to be a problem with, the task force having an article in addition to that, that will be the annual, usual fall town meeting. It's just because of some other things going on in town that
You wanna do it all at once and.
they were pushing it back from October to November.
Hey, you just covered 2 of those items at the same time, so. Perfect.
Cool.
Stacy, you got anything?
Nope, just the next meeting is June 11th, everybody okay with that? 4 o'clock.
Yep.
Oh, there is one more thing, so right now, for the last couple of years, several years actually, now that I can think of it, what has been the single signatory of the bill schedule? I'm assuming you guys don't mind if he continues doing that as
Nope.
chairman? Okay, there are some
Yeah.
things that you still have to sign and
Yeah.
get more than one signature for, but. Okay, so, can you just take a vote on that, and I will write something up and send it up to the accounting office
I
and
move
meet
it. I
annually?
move the chair have the signatory ability as has been in the past.
Second,
Okay,
Move second, so voted.
thank you.
Alright.
whew,
So next week, the next time it'll be that long too?
Yeah.
Probably,
Okay.
the rate study part, sorry about that.
It's all right.
Do we have a
Motion to adjourn.
move to adjourn.
Second.
Move second, so voted to adjourn.
That's what,
But we need this.
33?
We need this.
Yeah, it's,
5:33.
Yes, that's good.
there's a
That's great.
lot.
Yeah, we needed this.
Yeah.
And this is coming